got lots of seedlings to show you guys. No, I was thinking about it because we're editing a video right now. We're working on a video, and we show some of our seedlings in it. And I was like, I don't even know if we've shown in the videos. I can't even remember, other than a few weeks back when I was talking a little bit about the grow lights and stuff, if I've even shown you at all what I have going on. And I have almost all of my racks filled up, which is like crazy because it's like way too early. So there's lots to share. So because I'm down in my outbuilding, I'm hoping that my internet will cooperate with me. But let me know in the chat at all if it's seeming like it's glitchy and that it's not connecting. My data is usually pretty good. But I haven't done a video down here in a while. So, okay, let's get like right into it. I'm gonna flip the camera around and I'm gonna start showing off everything. So what I have here is I have a rack of seedlings okay, let me give you guys some context. So what I have going on for this rack is that it is right in front of our garage door. And this is out here in our garage because this is how I harden things off at this very early time of the year. I have this rack here so they can be on lights. And if the day is too cold, then, they're sheltered overnight. The temperatures are fine. But on the days when it's not freezing out, I open up this garage door and then they get some wind, they get some natural sunlight, and they get exposed to the the elements and get ready to get put outside without me having to drag it in, out, over and over again. So this stuff is stuff that I am all working on planting out right now. There's gaps in this rack because I've actually planted out some ranunculus. This is like what we're doing in the video that we're editing. So I have a few. Let's start at the bottom. I still have a few more trays of ranunculus in here, and you can see some like gaps in these. These ranunculus, they've just been having some issues sprouting. So that's why they're still in here. Another week and they should be good to go. And then look at these snapdragons. Look how insanely large these snapdragons have gotten. They're like too tall. Let's see. They're over 6 inches tall at this point. And these are all of my earliest snapdragons. And these are getting planted out over the next day or two as well. This is Costa, so this is like a non-roughly very early variety. And I think that this is Costa too. And then I also have some more here. And these are either Chantilly or Rocket. Those are the other 2 varieties that I have. Am I going to pinch the snaps? Yes, I definitely am. With snapdragons, you kind of want to pinch them. I'd probably pinch like around, let's see, get the camera in there. See, there's like a couple leaf connections. I'd do like a pinch in around there, leave a couple spots. If you don't pinch a snapdragon, what it's going to do is it's just going to grow, one flower. You pinch a snapdragon, it's going to flower a little bit later, but it's going to flower on 6 side shoots. So it's definitely a good idea to pinch the snapdragons. And I'm not going to pinch these yet. I'm going to plant them out and then I'm going to pinch them after they've been in the ground for a little bit because these are way too big, right? Like this is like the perfect size. This, in my opinion, this is how big they should be for transplanting. This is kind of ideal. These ones down here, they're like too big. They've gotten overgrown. I started them too early. And so these, I'm a little bit worried that they're going to suffer going out. So if it's too cold and the elements are too hard for these overgrown seedlings, then, the tips will die and then I don't have to pinch them. Nature will have pinched them for me. But yeah, so lots of snapdragons, which I'm excited about. And then this is also stuff that I'm going to be putting into the greenhouse too for my first my earliest planting of stuff. Someone's asking if you should pinch everything, and you should definitely not pinch everything. Here's an example of something you shouldn't pinch. This is stalk. Stalk is like a single stem. So if you pinch stalk, you're just pinching off the flower before it grows. So there's lots of things that you can't pinch, and then there's lots of things that you definitely should pinch. So you should do what I do, which is do a Google search every single time. So what I have in this tray is I have some dianthuses, and these are all this stuff is overgrown. All this stuff needs to go out, but it's been a little bit cool, so it's going out now. You know, worst case scenario, it dies. There's still lots of time in the season, but so I have some stock and then a couple different varieties of dianthus, and then up here I have like an Ami. This is a green mist. So so this is going. This is I'm like, there's a lot in here. This is a lot of green Ami. Okay, and then over here, I can't even remember what all I have in here. Okay. I love, so these racks, they're on like wheels. And one of the things that I love about them being on wheels is that I can move them around for working with them. They make for really good, you know, I can stack them in tight for growing. Okay, so in here, I have two varieties of calendula. I have Indian Prince and Flashback. And so I'm going to put these into the greenhouse. These are like so overgrown. I don't know how they're still surviving. And then I'm also going to put seeds in at the same time. And then I have some Scabiosa, and I think I've messed up the Scabiosa because it's been in here too long because it's going to seed. And then I have Orlay, which is, you know, like, it's kind of similar to a Queen Anne's lace, but like a smaller flower. You know, like Queen Anne's lace, it's like this big, whereas the Orlay, it's going to be like small clusters of white. And then just like a classic Queen Anne's lace in there. Yeah, so this is stuff that I'm all really excited about. And then I'm also, right, because all of this is going in my greenhouse. All of this is getting planted out right away. And then there are a few things that do better direct seeded, stuff that likes to germinate in cold weather. And so I have, you know, I have a greenhouse filled with that stuff there. I have an entire bed of snapdragons. And then I have like, you know, a half bed with those little seedlings. And then I have a half bed already planted. And then I have about a bed that I'm going to be direct seeding. So it's very exciting for me. Very excited to fill a greenhouse. Okay, so we're into a different room here. And every single room has its own seedling rack. This is the room where we normally arrange flowers. And this is like my Ranunculus hospital. This is like where all of my most sad Ranunculus are living. These are the very first Ranunculus that I started. These are the ones from the video where I was like fighting with the potting soil. Yeah, so I started these up. I don't know, it's been like a month now, and you can see what the issue is, right? Like some of them sprouted fine, but then most of these spots are empty. And I think that what was happening is that it was too dry. The Ranunculus, you want to be really careful. Here, let's get one here. Okay, here, perfect. So with the Ranunculus, you want to be really careful because what they are is they're these little corms. They're these little crazy octopus things. And so you want to soak them to get them hydrated, and then you want to put them into damp potting soil. And then you need to be careful that they don't rot. They're very susceptible to rotting, so you don't want the soil to be too wet. And these are a classic example of the entire world, the entire internet is very concerned about these rotting. They're like, don't ever water them, never water them ever. And that's probably true, but it's not true for me because we're so dry here that like the air, there's just like no humidity in the air. So with these, I need to water these as often as as any seedling to get them to actually sprout. So I was being overly cautious. Now I'm watering them, you know, I'm just watering them regularly. For if I'm trying to figure out if they need water, and this is the case for all my seedlings. If I need to tell if my seedling trays need water, I know how much they weigh. I know how much a tray of my specific potting soil weighs. when it's dry and when it's like saturated. So to test, you know, like I'm not like sticking my finger in, you know, because you look at this and this dirt looks quite dark. It looks like, oh, this is probably pretty wet. I don't need to water this. But when I pull up on the side, I see that they aren't. They aren't very wet, so these all need to get watered today. But yeah, I get lots of stuff here. I have here, let's see. Are they labeled? These are mostly the ones that I saved. So these are mostly like yellows. These are yellows. This is Pauline. This is like a burgundy color flower. This is Bonbon. Bonbon is like a pink, is like a baby pink color. This is a pink and white mix that I saved. This down here, more yellow. The yellows are my favorites, so it makes me happy to see that these are a little bit more full than the other ones. This is yellow also, so oh, so many Ranunculus, makes me happy. Okay, and then so you can see here, these are all in like plugs. That is how I've put these. And this works okay if I can get them to germinate, but I had issues germinating them like this. But all the ones that I did in a tray like this, they had no issue at all for germinating. And here, I'm going to dig one up for you guys to show you what they look like. Because what they're doing on the surface doesn't actually like tell you anything about what they're actually doing. Because this is what they're doing under the ground. Right? So the little sprout isn't what matters. What you're doing is you're trying to get these roots, right? And so you can see that there's lots of action going on, even though this tray, you know, you look at the tray, there's just a little bit of spikes, but yeah. So that's exciting for me. You know, and even these, like all these ones here, if I like pull these, here, let's pull one. These are really dry, so pull out. Right? So there's lots of roots in there. So they're growing, they're happy. Okay, we have to put this one. We have to put it back in so it doesn't dry out. If I leave it, I'll forget. Okay. Planted back in, because these aren't going out yet. And this is the one that I'm hoarding. This is like one of my biggest ones that instead of planting out in the greenhouse, I'm keeping inside for a couple more weeks till it warms up, and then it's going in a pot. And then I'm gonna bring it up to my house. Yeah, so this rack has, you know, if I can get these to work out, how many? Oh, living on a prayer, your ranunculus are blooming, whatever. us Canadian Zone 5 growers, you know, it's still many months until I'm going to have ranunculus. Yeah, but this tray probably has 600 or 700 ranunculus. If I can get some of those, you know, worst case scenario, I'm probably still have like 500 in there. So that's exciting. The ranunculus make me so happy. The first time that we grew them was last year, and they always seemed like they were something that was like really difficult and really complicated. So like I was intimidated when we grew them last year, but they ended up being really easy. You just, you know, as long as they're not rotting and as long as they're not getting too hot, they're pretty happy and pretty simple to grow, which works out perfectly for my sand pit here. Yeah, so I'm really excited, you know, to have so many ranunculus that we're experimenting with this year. It'll be really fun to have buckets and buckets and buckets of them, as long as I don't mess them up. Okay, so we're in. Oh, what do I pair ranunculus with in a bouquet? So last year, if you go back and watch some of the spring videos, what I was doing the ranunculus with was kales and things like that. But I sold a lot of ranunculus straight bunches because I didn't really have anything else. Okay, so this is my bathroom, and this is where I grow most of my seedlings. And the reason why I love it usually is 2 racks. It usually has another rack in here. And that's why it's so important that they're on wheels, because it's very hard to fit a rack and fit me in here. But they like move around so I can get in. So this bathroom works great for growing seedlings for me because it has its own electric heater, which is like controlled. So I can set this bathroom to whatever temperature I want. And then it becomes like my little, or not so little, my large germination chamber. It works really good to be able to grow in conditions that, I don't necessarily have anywhere else on my farm in March in Canada. Even my house is, I can heat this spot up to 80, and I definitely don't keep my house that hot. Okay, but lots of exciting stuff on this rack. Okay, so we'll just start with this because this is the least exciting. So I have more of these snapdragons, and these need to get out too. These are the chantillies and the rockets too. The costas are going out first, but these I need to start hardening off. So those are exciting. And then, I see people asking about mold. I've definitely grown mold in this room because it's drywalled now, but originally it was, like unfinished, I don't know what's plywood. And so the first year I grew mold in it, but I don't grow mold in it because it's also a bathroom. So I keep the fan. There's no fan on right now because I'm in here talking and it'd be really loud. But I leave the fan running 24/7. And so the moisture that the plants create in this bathroom are constantly being vented out of this room and out of the building with the bathroom fan running. Okay, so this is some exciting stuff. This here, let's see, let's get in a little bit closer. So this is Dusty Miller. And so you can kind of see that it's starting to get like the gray Dusty Miller coloring. But I've never grown Dusty Miller before. And I thought it was so fun that the first leaves are, smooth, not fuzzy, like what I think of as a Dusty Miller, and so bright green. So those are exciting. And then over here, I have some Euringium. These are, I couldn't buy any of the sea hollies from my wholesaler this year. The sea holly was all sold out. But I was able to get these in seed. So the sea holly I prefer is like the big ones, like the full-size ones. These are the small cluster variety. These are like the glitter series. And so they're small like flowers, but then there's like a bunch of them on each stem. So this is blue glitter, and then I also have a whole section of the white glitter back here, and these are all due for getting potted up. This is on my to-do list for this week. And then here, this is all eucalyptus. So they were in the plugs and they've been potted up. And so these are doing fairly good. These are, sometimes the eucalyptus can have a hard time getting potted up. But I haven't had any die-off really on these when I potted them up, so that makes me really happy. And then I have a few more of them in here. This is like my tray. This is like my random tray. This really tall section is Rudbeckia I can't, it's not coming out of my mouth. You guys, my brain isn't working. Trioblea, I don't know, whatever. I can't say it. My brain's broken. But these are like a mini daisy Rudbeckia, right? So most of the Rudbeckias that I grow have these big, beautiful yellow flowers. This one's different. This is like a cluster of like mini yellow flowers, and I love this. I didn't have it last year. Thank you, Jennifer, for putting it in the chat for everyone who's wondering what I was trying to say. This wasn't in our farm last year because I had issues with, I had only a little bit of seed. I couldn't get a new pack of seed on it. I only had my leftover seed and it didn't germinate. But I loved this. This is like, I have another tray of this and I would like to have an entire half bed of the Okay, but I want lots of this. And then I have more Rudbeckia. So I have, I didn't label these, but I have Indian Summer, I'm pretty sure is what this tray is. And then I have some like Sahara and Cherry Brandy, and I have, I can't remember them off the top of my head. But so I have like a double daisy one, like a really full, like frilly one in the yellow. I have like some that are in more of the browns. And I have a couple like blends that have some more of the other colors. The Rudbeckias are so fun because they're like fuzzy. The leaves are like really fun to touch because they're like bunny ears is almost what they feel like. So these, I'm really excited about these, and I'll show you guys why. Here, this one's probably the best example. I have to turn my light on. Okay, so these, they don't look that big. They don't look like they're going crazy, all of these. But when I lift up the bottom of the tray and I check out what the roots are doing, the roots are actually starting to pop out on the bottom. And I know the camera's not really picking it up very well. But these, because you can't pull plugs until the roots are filled in on a plug. So if the roots are coming out of the bottom and I'm starting to see roots like forming as a mat, that means that they're at the point that if the weather is cooperating, I'm able to pull these out and to plant them into the garden. So these, even though they don't look like very much, if the weather is good, I could be planting these potentially next week. And same on these ones here. This is feverfew, a million feverfew. And there is, oh yeah, that's, I'm seeing in the chat there. I don't grow Irish eyes, but I love Irish eyes. The variety that I grow is, I don't know, but the green centers on the Rudbeckia, I love them. Okay, sorry. Distracted by my love of Rudbeckia from my love of feverfew. Yeah, so the feverfew is the same. The feverfew is nice and cold hardy. These have been potted up for a while. You know, the roots, I don't know if these roots, it's just very dark. And then with like my camera, the lens on the back of my camera has seen better days. So it's hard to show the roots, but they're looking good. Yeah, so I'm really excited about all those. And this yet again is a variety of, so I have Magic Single, I have Magic Lime Green, I have Virgo, and I have another double variety, which is exciting. Okay, here. I can't shoot up. So I'm gonna, because there's too much light, it'll just do the camera. Okay, so this is my top shelf stuff. This tray is Fama Blue, which is a perennial Scabosia, I think, if as long as I'm remembering correctly. And these are looking really, really nicely too. In general, I would rather buy, and any day of the week, I would rather pay $1 for a perennial plug from a wholesaler than to grow a tray. You know, these are a 72 tray. It's definitely worth $72 for me to get 1-year-old plugs, or even like 4-month-old perennial plugs from like a wholesaler versus fussing and growing these out myself. But I found the seed for this. I hadn't found like the place that I buy my wholesale plugs from. They didn't have this, so I'm doing it. But yeah, so this is Fama White, and these, I love these. They make, like, when I see pictures of them, they look incredible because they're really big. The Scabiosa, you know, they're more of like a bachelor button size flower. They're just like a little filler thing, but these like perennial ones, they're just that next size up. And so the issue that I have is so much stuff in the spring is these like tiny little flowers, right? These like, you know, like bachelor buttons. It's like they're a pain in the butt to pick. They're a tiny flower. They're hard to work with. People aren't like, oh, like a bachelor button, I'm going to pay $1 for a stem of bachelor buttons. So it's hard because they take as much work to grow as the bigger flowers. So it's hard to be able to make money on these smaller flowers, I find. So if I have this like scabiosa, because I've never grown scabiosa before, but if I have a perennial scabiosa, the flowers are bigger, they're a little bit more marketable, then maybe the money makes a bit more sense for growing it. Because I'm not growing a million flowers unless I can make some money for it. If I was just going to grow them for my pleasure, then the list would be different than what I'm growing for the farm. Okay, so I have an entire tray of yellow yarrow, which I'm very excited about. I think the yarrow, so I have 100 terracotta yarrow coming in my plug order. And so they had like a bunch of colors for the yarrow, and I was like, no, you know what? The one that I liked the best, the one that I wanted the most was terracotta. I'm only gonna buy terracotta. I don't need any more yarrow, but I'm obsessed with yarrow, and I have like so many seeds for it. And yarrow actually is super easy to grow from seed. So I was like, well, I regret not also buying 100 yellow yarrow. So now I have 100 yarrow to go with my orange yarrow. So that makes me happy. And I have like 1,000 yarrow. I have like 2 full yarrow beds, so there's lots. Okay, and then this I'm super excited about. These are cardoon, which is like a little bit of a cold hardier, quicker growing like plant similar to an artichoke. And I'm not growing this to harvest artichokes as a vegetable. I'm growing this so that the artichokes can flower, and then I can use the flowers in my cut flowers. These are a pain in the butt, and I'm only doing it because it's going to be like a super fun experiment. Because I have to start these super early, and these they're overgrown. They need to get out of this tray. They're like massive. But they are they can't handle cold weather. They need hot weather, and you need to start them really, really early. So those are going to need to get potted up into bigger pots, which means that when I pot things up, that tray then turns into a full shelf. A single tray turns into an entire shelf worth of light space. And where we are, I'm about 3 weeks, I'd probably say, until I can have warm weather stuff outside in my greenhouses. So things are going to get a little bit tight for those. They might get a little bit root bound, which I don't really want to happen. But at worst case scenario, I'll pot up some of them. I'll leave some of them to get root bound and sad. And we'll go from there. Because we need to get at least one. We need at least one. Okay, then I have more. The fun never ends. Okay, let me flip the camera here. Okay, so what I have on this shelf is the last of my Ranunculus. So these shelves here, these are the Ranunculus that I got pre-sprouted. These are probably at 2 weeks, I think. 2 weeks ago is when I started these. Maybe, yeah, like 2 weeks, I think, at this point. So they're just starting to pop up. They just started to pop up some greens in the last couple days. Down here, it's more of them. So I had to, the last day or two, they had to get under these lights. And then this here, these are kind of fun. These are my anemones. I'm looking for one to pull up to show you guys. Oh, look, one of them's like growing a little bit there. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, so they're like super weird looking. They don't really look like much. These are just under the lights because if the ranunculus have started, they'll be starting soon. I need to find one that'll let me pick it up. Okay, let's try this one. Oh, they're like rooted in pretty good now. Oh no, I broke it. Okay, now, tug. Okay, so yet again, they're like that ranunculus that I pulled up, right? They don't really look like anything, but then you rip them out and there's crazy roots going on, and then somewhere at the top, they'll start to be shoots. But the thing that you really need is the roots to get going. That's what you're doing more than anything when you're pre-sprouting these. So those are kind of crazy. We grew these last year. And the decision on the anemones was that we weren't going to grow them again. We found they weren't very tall, and they didn't really do much. But obviously I have each of these trays have 100, so I bought 300. So I lied when I said I wasn't going to grow them again. But I'm doing them a little bit earlier. I'm going to baby them a little bit more. I'm hoping to have better success. What I found with them last year was the plants weren't very strong, and because the plants weren't very strong, they didn't send up. The flowers that they sent up had like really short stems, even though the stems are supposed to be even taller than the Ranunculus. So I'll give it another try. In theory, they should work good, but I don't know. Okay, and then this is exciting for me. More snapdragons. Because this is the first of my summer plantings. So these are snapdragons. I have Potomacs. These 2 trays are Potomacs. I bought a couple colors. I bought apple blossom. I bought like a burgundy. I got like an orange, which is like, the oranges are like, the bronze are like incredible. They're like orange and pink and yellow. The colors are really great. And then for an experiment, even though I don't like frilly frou-frou snapdragons, I decided to get Madam Butterfly to try out this year because other people like them. So I also have a tray of this. And these, I know like three trays doesn't really look like much, but each of these trays have 1,000 seeds in them. So this should turn into, because I'm expecting a not great germination rate. So these will be at least 1,000. I'm hoping maybe 1,500 snapdragons. Oh, so if your snapdragons have like the first leaves have 3 instead of 2, it's like having twins instead of having like a single baby. They'll keep having 3 leaves as they keep growing. But it doesn't do anything bad. It's just every once in a while having a little bit of a mutation. Okay, and then up here, this is the last thing that I have going on. This is a thing of Rudbeckia, I think. And then 2 trays of feverfew. Yeah. No, that's wrong. It's 1 tray of feverfew, 1 tray of Trilobia Rudbeckia, and then 1 tray of Indian Summer and I think Sahara. Yeah, so I'm really excited. Really excited to have all those things going. I have a lot of work to do. Tonight, after I put my kids to bed, after I do this video, I have to go and I have to put my kids to bed because and then after they're to bed, I'm down here and I'm having a late night hanging out because I have a lot of trays that I need to fill up. I have 24 trays that need to get seeded in the next couple days. Sorry, I'm just here. Oh, there we go. A backdrop with or you know what, guys? Sorry, I can answer some questions for a little bit because that's the tour. But I'm gonna pop this into my. All right, just bear with me. All right there. Putting that into my clip. Okay. And then I'm gonna come and I'm gonna take a sit down because I'm not gonna get to sit down later. So I'm gonna enjoy a sit down while I still can. I have a lot of stuff that has to get started. And it's still fairly early in the year. So the things that I'm starting aren't actually summer crops yet. I don't start my summer crops until the beginning of April. Okay, there we go. Now I can relax. Sorry, guys. I just killed my tripod trying to relax. Okay, there we go. Okay, I see a couple questions there, but yeah, so I don't start my summer stuff here until April. Because at the earliest, because so when I grow in these plug trays, like ideally they should only be in the tray for about 3 weeks. And the summer stuff that I grow is very, very quickly growing. So, beginning of April is when I start doing like the things like zinnias, cosmos, marigolds. pretty much everything. And I don't have to worry too much about the space, right? Like one of my biggest constraints, like I've gone and I've shown you all these racks. I have 4 racks with lights. And to have 4 racks with lights is like a pretty big investment in lights and in space and in racks. But they fill up really quickly. You know, it doesn't take much before the racks are full. So if I was to try to grow with grow lights, to grow zinnias and things like that, I wouldn't be able to. They just take up too much space. But by April, I can use my unheated greenhouses outside, and I can seed a tray, put it outside. We still are getting frosts in April, but we are not freezing so hard that I need to worry about things freezing in the greenhouse. So those warm weather crops, they get really hot weather. They get heated up really hot during the sunny days in April that aren't super hot because the greenhouse gets all heated up. So they germinate really, really good. And then, and then they survive the cool nights because of the little bit of cover. And then that gives me like way more space and way more ability to grow seedlings. So the things that I'm seeding now is I'm still seeding things that are cold hardy, basically things that can get putted out before the last frost date. So my last frost date here is usually around May 1st. So things that I'm starting right now, like I said, I usually keep them in the seed trays for about 3 weeks. So those things I'll kind of be planting in the beginning of April. So I have to do status, I have to do straw flowers. I've done some snapdragons. Those are a good example, like the Rudbeckia, the feverfew. There's lots of stuff that I can do right now. Other things, like veggies, like I'll do some lettuce. Now's the time for me to start doing lettuce. I saw someone asking if I've started any sunflowers. Sunflowers, I'm willing to experiment with the seedlings ability to handle cold. They're not supposed to be, they're supposed to be like a summer heat loving one. They're not supposed to like getting frosted as little babies, but I'm willing to see if maybe they can, because it's sunflower seeds. It's not a huge loss if the little babies get killed. So I could try some in trays now. And then there's other things that I'm going to be like, that I could do putting out into the greenhouse. So like tomatoes, peppers, zucchinis, cucumbers, things like that. I could start them now. And then in the same way that in April, I'm going to be growing seedlings in my greenhouse. I have one greenhouse that I've saved for doing vegetables. And in April, I'd be able to plant those out. So I usually, for tomatoes and peppers, I like to do tomatoes 6 weeks before the last frost. And then peppers, I like to do 8 weeks. But I haven't done it yet. So normally I do my peppers March 1st, but we're not growing peppers to sell at all. So I haven't felt a huge rush to get them done. I'm just going to start them when I do the tomatoes. But those are things also that I feel like I should be started this week. Like I see someone there talking about like celosia. So I personally wouldn't start celosia. Celosia is in the list of things that for me, for like my timing, because of my zone and everything, I wouldn't do celosia like until like that kind of 3 weeks before my last frost. I find the celosia, if it gets root bound, it really doesn't like that. It never kind of recovers. Celosia also I found gets really stunted by getting exposed to cold. So the celosia, like, it's going to be the same for me as the zinnias and the cosmos and stuff like that. But so I've seen a few people asking about like my zone and stuff. Like I'm in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, and my advice about the specific plants I grow, aren't like I have a really, really weird growing zone. I'm a zone 5. And I haven't determined if I'm like an A or B. I'm somewhere in the middle on this property. I just haven't learned the property good enough to know exactly what I'd call my zone, but it's safe to say I'm a zone 5. Maybe I have pockets that are like a little bit warmer than zone 5A. But at the same time, I get very hot summers. We get 100 degrees in the summer, and we also, the April showers bring May flowers. Like, no, we do not get rain. We're like a semi-arid desert is what our like growing region is kind of classified as. We get 13 inches of like rainfall, but that includes snow annually. So we're very dry. And the wettest month of the year, including like January and February, like all that snow, the most moisture falls in June for where we are. So will have snow in like January and February, and then it stops. Like for me outside, the snow melted last week, and I can plant. Like it's like I had snow and it melted. There's no puddles anymore. Like there's no mud. We're like a total sand pit where we are, and that's specific to my property again. There's you go 5 minutes from my house and people have clay, and they'd be mucky and they'd be wet. But so I have very low moisture, and then I have very high drainage. So spring here. So now we're in March. March and April, they're very dry. And we'll get days that can get warm. We'll get days that, and I'm Canadian, so Fahrenheit is hard for me. Because like we can get days that'll go like up to like 20 Celsius. It's like, what is that? So it's like minus 30 and then the double. So like 70, I think. I need an American who knows Celsius. I think it's 70. So we'll get like days that go up to 70, and then the nights will freeze. Because we'll get these beautiful, bright, sunny days. But anytime it's clear means it's going to be cold at night. So we get kind of these like March, April days where it's I got a whole range of answers on this. But yeah, so it's it's like the weather here is quite strange. And then the other thing that happens is it goes from like kind of normal spring temperatures, and then like mid-June hits, and it's hot. It's like summer. It's full on. We maybe don't hit 100 in June, though last year we had like record-breaking, the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Canada were happening in the end of June. But we have hot, so into June, all of July, all of August, and like most of September is hot. And so I go from having like cold, freezing springs to having a period of time that's like similar to what like southern growers have to deal with. And so, but then like unlike a southern grower, I have a short window, right? Because so September it's very hot. I really struggle with doing like cooler, like shoulder season cooler crops. Lots of people would do like a planting of broccoli in the fall. I could never do that because if I tried to plant broccoli, it would bolt because it's too hot in September. Or if I planted it late enough in September that it didn't suffer from the heat, it would get frozen because we then have our first frost in mid-October, and our first frost can be like, and the next night it's -5. It's not like when the first frost comes, it's just a frost, and then it's next week there's a frost, and things that can handle a little bit of frost are fine. Usually our first frost is pretty close to like our like freezing temperatures consistently overnight. So So I told you all these things about my weather and about my timing and everything because the zone doesn't really tell you anything. People, if you are in Colorado, you potentially have weather similar to me. There's a few areas in Colorado which are these kind of like high deserts like me, and they have really similar kind of growing conditions. But other than that, like, if you guys wanted my list of what I grow and you wanted to plant things exactly on the days that I plant things, it would be a failure for you, because you really need to adapt what you grow and what you do to your specific conditions. And so going back to kind of talking about like what I'm starting now, the I don't like to say to you guys that I start tomatoes March 15th. And you'll probably see me like doing this, and it is intentional. I say that I start tomatoes 6 weeks before my last frost. And I say that because that is advice that I can share with you, right? Like that's the tip. Planting the plants, if everyone went and planted their tomatoes on March 15th, that's not a helpful number. It's the 6 weeks before the last frost. That's the number that's actually helpful. And so if and this is something to keep in mind when you're looking for advice from other growers. If people are giving you like a planting schedule, and it's and the planting schedule is like planted on this day and planted on this day, that, like, in my opinion, that's bad advice, right? I would never make a planting schedule other than like my own personal planting schedule that I'd be like, this is the farm plan. I would never share a planting schedule that had specific dates unless I was like, I'm making it specifically for you, and I've like researched your last frost date, and I've done the math. What you really want is answers where someone is like, this number, which you can then apply to like your specific growing conditions. And then the things that you need to consider when looking at that answer. Like my favorite question that I like to ask when someone gives me an answer is like why is this their answer, right? Because the answer, if you just take the answer to a question like how early before, when should I plant tomatoes? 6 weeks before frost. The knowledge to be able to go to that next level with your growing, I think, comes in the understanding why you planted 6 weeks before your last frost, right? So if you're not thinking about why that is the answer to the question, you kind of never get to that next level where you can then come up with the answers for yourself without having to be like, okay, well, I know tomatoes, but when do I do peppers, right? So the reason why I plant tomatoes 6 weeks before the last frost is that tomatoes grow super fast. So when I start them under the lights, they need to be potted up into like full-size pots at 3 weeks. Tomatoes grow super, super fast as long as you're growing them correctly, right? So if I say your tomatoes should be ready to be potted into a 4-inch pot after 3 weeks, and you have tomatoes and they're 8 weeks old and they're still like little tiny, sad, pathetic plants, it's not that my answer of they should be ready at 3 weeks is wrong. It's the fact that you didn't grow them. You didn't optimize your growing, right? Because if you're growing your tomatoes and it took 8 weeks, then it's like, well, why did it take 8 weeks if it should take only 3 weeks until they need to be potted up? And then it makes you be able to self-identify the things that you're doing wrong. Because that's the hardest thing, right? It's the hardest thing is to know how to overcome the specific mistakes that you're making. Okay, I know that was like a crazy rant, and I don't know if anyone's like following along on it. I need to go. I have 10 minutes, so let's like do some questions. I'll stop ranting. So, I don't know. Maybe So I saw a comment, and I don't know, guys. I don't know if my comments are working properly. Just because I don't know, like it might be the data. It might be messing up with the data, and the chat isn't coming through well. But I did earlier see someone asking about Lysianthus. I saw someone asking the I'm seeing some stuff. Sorry, it's very hard for me to read and talk at the same time. Someone was asking if I ever start Lysianthus, and so I tried starting Lysianthus last year. I spent $100 on seeds, and I ended up with like 20 seedlings that I planted out, and none of them ever grew into anything. So I'm never growing Lysianthus ever again. But this year I spent $1,000 on Lysianthus plugs, which are coming. So fingers crossed, because I'm going to be really grumpy if I'm like $1,100 deep into killing Lysianthus. But yeah, fingers crossed. I should have lots of Lysianthus to show you. But yeah, like money well spent. Even though I'm like, it's going to be $1,000 to buy these things. Money well spent if it means I get like plants that actually grow. I saw Nina asking about spacing for Trilobia. Like I'd say Google it. Anything that I'm ever like unsure about, I Google before I plant it, but I default to 6 inches. And Trilobia like might be one that needs a little bit more spacing because it gets massive. It like turns into a hedge. So it maybe it would do well at like 12 inches. But like I'd still plant it at 6 inches, like to try. Because with the flowers, if you plant them tighter, they just grow more vertical. The flowers in general, they don't mind getting like crammed in a little bit too much. Blossom drop due to heat on tomatoes. So I've never really had issues with it that I've noticed. I grow varieties. In general, I'm looking for varieties that like the heat. I'm looking for varieties that will grow well in my conditions. And I'm also looking for varieties that are super prolific. So honestly, my plants could be dropping like 90% of their blossoms, and I don't even know if I'd notice, just because most of the stuff is so prolific that it's already maybe not like setting fruit to a ratio of how many flowers it has. But yet again, me not having the blossom drop might have to do with my specific growing area. Because we're so dry here, we have no humidity. And so even though we get to be 100 during the day in the summer, the sun goes down and the air very quickly cools off because there's not that humidity to hold the heat. So even in the summer, it's 100 in the day, but it cools down at night. It'll cool down to, I don't know, 28. Someone said what 28 was. What was it? 86? Was that what 28 was, like 86 or something? So we do like, so the tomatoes would be less stressed here than they would be like down in the south, where maybe the blossom drop is more of an issue. What fertilizer do you use on your seedlings, and how often do you fertilize? My bag. Let's see. Oh, they're heavy. This is what I use. Let's see if it's all glaring. It's called Gaia's Green, and it's a powdered. It's an organic powdered fertilizer. And what I do with it is I mix this into my potting soil, and so I don't fertilize with like a liquid fertilizer on my seedlings because I find that's a pain in the butt because you have to remember to do it every week. What I do is I add the fertilizer into the potting soil when I grow my seedlings, and with this, it lasts for 4 weeks. So if I'm like I said, most of my stuff is 3 weeks in the tray, or like tomatoes, 3 weeks, and then they're getting potted up. When they get potted up, they are getting more fertilizer because there's fertilizer in the soil that I pot up with. So that's what I use for the seedlings. But I forgot to use it in the past. And if I forget to use it, then I just get a multi-purpose organic liquid fertilizer, and then once a week I give them a fertilize. But I find I don't know. I find that like algae will grow if I use like too much of the liquid fertilizers. I much prefer this. But I know most people don't, don't put fertilizers into their potting soil. And yet again, I don't like, I'm so not humid here. I don't get a lot of like even algae and stuff. I don't struggle with it very often on my seedlings. I don't have very many molds. I don't have very many like pests that get into my seedlings inside the house. And I think that has to do with like just our low ambient humidity. So some like, you know, I'm really lucky with the low humidity. Fertilize at 21 days unless there's less than 50% germination. Yeah, maybe on Lizzie. I don't know. I'd fertilize before 21 days. Yeah, watch top 10 tips for starting Lisianthus. I don't know. I feel like the number one tip that should be like just don't. It's like it's so easy to buy the plugs. If the seed was cheaper, I'd be more motivated. But the seed is so expensive, right? Like cuz like if I was to buy seed for how many plugs I bought, because I have 1,000. They were like $1 each, the plugs, with shipping and everything. So if I was to like buy the seed for it, you know, the seed's so expensive. I don't know. Like with how bad I'm not the best at growing seedlings. I'm not gonna do it. Do you have a lot of Fungusgnats? Yeah, okay, so I know I was saying that I don't have much of that, and I think that might be partially because of the humidity. The other thing is I go through so much potting soil, and I buy professional grade potting soil, and I usually buy the professional grade potting soil from actual farm businesses. So the place as of now that I'm buying my potting soil from is a grow up shop. And they're my number one. Like I'm always telling everyone, if you have a local grow up shop, and this might be like being a BC person, that like this is you have a grow up shop in every single BC community. But they're the ultimate resource for indoor growing because they service clients who are indoor growing all year round. So right now you'll find a lot of potting soil coming into the hardware stores, and some of that potting soil might not be super fresh. It might be from the year before, and it then could have been infested, right? Because it comes sterile. When it's like originally comes, it comes sterile. So the one way that so if it's being stored in a place where it gets wet, that is going to increase your likelihood of having the fungus gnats. If it's older, so you know it's like been sitting around for a year and it got wet last summer, and the gnats got into it, that's going to increase the likelihood. And then depending on what you mix in. So at this time of year, when I'm growing only indoors, I don't add compost into my potting soil because I don't really have compost. The compost kind of only shows up later on in the year. But by April, I have compost, and I'm mixing compost into my potting soil. That there's a good chance I could have fungus gnats in those seedlings, but because I'm growing them outside in my greenhouse, the fungus gnats aren't really an issue, right? Like fungus gnats aren't gonna like destroy your seedlings outside because you know there's space for them to go. There's places for them to like escape when they hatch out of the potting soil. It mostly just gets nasty when you're doing the indoor growing. But yeah, so you know, my best tip is try to find the nicest potting soil you can get, and try to find dry potting soil. If you pick it up and the bale's like super heavy, maybe see if you can find a bale that isn't so heavy, because if it's really heavy, it's because there's water that's gotten into it. Your start trays, are they hard to use? I like the seedling trays. I like the plastic trays. They're a bit of a pain in the butt to get out. The brand, so a bunch of what I have is like, I have some hand-me-down stuff, which is like amazing. I like met someone, I was selling seedlings to someone who like hooked me up with a ton of seedling trays, and that like, you know, when you're buying things like at 100 at a time, like, you know, even if they're $1, if someone's like, oh, here, I have this for you, it's like, oh my God, it's like $100 of money saved. So I have a lot of it. They break down, and so, you know, as we're going into our 4th year, a lot of the stuff is like pretty garbagey. I'm still using it, and stuff that's like really broken, I'll like double up to strengthen it. But my preferred brand of seedling trays is Windstrip trays. They're like crazy expensive. They're like stupid expensive. I've been slowly buying them a 10-pack at a time. Like they're a little bit so. I think you can buy them directly from Neversink Tools or something like that. But if you put in Windstrip, it's WINSTRIP. If you put that in, you'll be able to find them. But here in Canada, they're really expensive. They're like $15-20 a tray. But they're super strong, and then they have air pruning, so they have like airflow, and so they grow really nice seedlings. And then because they're a little bit stiffer, they're a little bit easier to work with for getting the plugs out. And I was telling Ian, I was like, I need a plug popper because I was fighting with plugs today. And if you get a plug popper, what it is it's just something that you push it down on. It releases all the plugs, and so it can be really fast. But there's lots of different systems that you can use for growing stuff. I know the flower farmers, they all love doing the mini soil blocks. The mini soil blocks drive me crazy. I don't really love them. I like the larger soil blocks, but they can take up a lot of space. You know, and I just find I struggle with some moisture issues. So I like the trays, specifically the Windstrip trays. Okay, let's see, because I do need to get going. Where do you get the plugs from? So there's lots of places you can get plugs from. You know, I'm Canadian. So like yeah, so yeah, there's lots of places. I get perennial plants, and they don't necessarily come as plugs. They kind of come just like in a bag, like roots in a bag, from my wholesaler for flowers, which is Van Noort. And they're like for small scale wholesaler. They're easy. I think their minimum order is like $500, and they have like a whole list of stuff. So they're really easy for me to work with. The Lisianthus, they came from like a co-op, like a group thing. I'm in a couple like flower farmer groups. So when they're like, hey, who wants to buy flowers with me? I'm like, woo, me. Yeah, and then there's like, you know, there's other places, but that's the only place I think I have stuff coming from this year. Okay, what size snapdragons when I plant them out? Okay, I'm not going to answer any more questions, but I'm going to answer this because this is one of my favorite rants. And then I have to go. So I'm not even going to scroll through the comments because I kind of have it stopped. Okay, here, let's see. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to finish off on this, and then I have to go because I have to put my kids to bed. So the size of the plant isn't how you determine when something is done or how long. Okay, sorry. I need to think of how to say this. Okay, so people ask all the time, like, you know, what size plug should I use, right? And so I have lots of 72s. 72s are what I'm using for the snapdragons. And I like to use 72s for the tomatoes because it means there's 72 plants in the 10 by 20 inch space. So the lower the number, the more volume of dirt per plant. So I'm trying to think how best to like explain this. When you pick the plug size to use, it has less to do with what the plant is and how big you're going to grow the plant, and it has more to do with the time that you're going to grow the plant. So the one thing about plug trays, which is like a little bit of a learning curve compared to the soil blocks, because the soil blocks you can plant at any time. You could make a soil block, put a seed in, and plant it the next day. You don't have to wait to a moment, right? Because it's its own like little thing. You can grab it, you can pick it up. The plugs is just like dirt in a container. You can't grab dirt out of a container. Like if you try to pull it and pick it up, it's just going to fall apart. So you can't actually pull your plants out of the plug trays until the roots have filled in the growing space. And then you pull it out, and it's a plug. It holds together. It holds the dirt. But it has more to do with the roots filling in than it has to do with anything else. So if you have plants and you want to plant them out really, really quickly, then you're going to want to use a really, really small plug, because that means less space inside the plug, means less time it's going to take before the roots fill the plug and you're able to pull it out. So on the rack at the beginning of the video, I showed some stuff. They're in 200 trays. Those are, you know, Rudbeckian feverfew. It's stuff I'm going to be planting out really early. Rudbeckian feverfew grows really slowly. So by growing them in a 200 plug, I can plant those straight, like I can pull them and plant them in 3 weeks. The tomatoes, you know, I was saying they grow really fast. I plant them in a 72 tray. In 3 weeks, I can pull them and plant them. If I also have another size of the seedling tray, which is a 128 tray. And those, you know, so my 72s on most of the things I grow, 4 weeks is how long it takes. The 128s is 3 weeks till they get planted out. And then the 200s on lots of stuff, the stuff just grows too fast. I wouldn't even bother using a 200 tray. I only grow slow growing things in the 200 trays. But so when I decide, for me, if I want to plant something in a 72 tray or a 128 tray, I'm not even necessarily thinking about how big I want the plant or what the specific seed is. What I'm thinking about is how long I want to hold on to these seedlings until I plant them into the ground. So I need a little bit more of a buffer in time earlier in the season, because I don't know when I'm going to plant stuff, right? Because last frost date isn't an actual number, right? The last frost date is just the last day that there's a frost. And you can make educated guesses about when it is based on like past records. But it might be a super cold spring. My last frost date could potentially be like mid-May instead of beginning of May. If I had plants that were ready to be planted out at the beginning of May, in a 200 tray, like it would be like, oh my God, they have to go into the ground like now. I wouldn't be able to hold on to them for 2 more weeks. If I had plants that I had ready to plant out May 1st in a 128 tray, I have a buffer of about a week, right? I'm like, oh, you know, like they really need to get planted out, but if they get planted out 5 days from now, they won't suffer. A 72 tray, it has more, you know, now I'm like, oh, you know, I could like push it to like 2 weeks without like, you know, completely killing the plants. So it's a weird way of thinking. And this is something that I know lots of people, it's a struggle to understand, because people will be like, what do I plant the cosmos in? What do I, you know, and so the number, like it really is, the number isn't about how big the plants are. Because like lots of plants, you don't want a big massive plant. Lots of plants, they do a lot better when they're smaller to get transplanted. You know, the stuff that you transplant are stuff that can handle being transplanted. But in general, plants are more comfortable being transplanted the smaller they are. So you don't want, like, I don't want a snapdragon that's like this big and it has buds, and then I'm transplanting it out. It's really going to suffer by doing that. Ideally, I want a snapdragon that's kind of like 2-3 inches tall when I plant it out. At the maximum, I'd gladly plant out 1-inch snapdragons if the weather was good. So kind of when you make the decisions of when you get to that next level where you're not just learning how to grow the seedlings, because when you're just learning, the 72s are great because they're really forgiving. But when you kind of take it to the next level where you're refining how you're growing seedlings, you think about it as time, kind of instead of space. But yeah, okay, so I have to go. But thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out. We have a video that we're working on. It'll probably be coming out at the end of the week all about first planting of the year, getting those ranunculus out. You know, and it's really fun because we're first time like doing something outside. You know, it doesn't look very exciting yet. It's very like brown still, but it started. The planting time has started. And if you haven't checked them out, because the views are a little bit down on them, so I don't know if you guys aren't interested or if YouTube didn't push them out at all. But we have a vlog that I made last week that is, I forget what the title is. But it's, you know, there's lots of really fun stuff. We were showing like a lot of the things that are going on. Oh, the cleaning up. We're showing like tons of stuff that's going on the farm in that vlog. And then we do like the dried flower arrangement. You know, so that's I highly recommend that one. And then we also made a video over, I think it went out yesterday actually, that is how I make bouquets, like the actual mechanics of how to put bouquets together. And that's like a question that you guys have all asked me. Like I've had that question a million times of people wanting that specific video, wanting the video of just how the bouquets to go together. So, you know, I feel a lot of you would enjoy it. So make sure to go check those ones out. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks again for hanging out. Okay, bye now.